It has been an article of faith with these monsters in the Bush crime family that the United States does not torture. In fact, Bush and Cheney have said that our interrogations of people who were swept up in operations that God only knows where the motive to sweep them up came from, those interrogations never involved torture. On September 6, 2006, according to Bob Woodward writing in the Washington Post today, Bush said, the United States does not torture. It's against our laws and it's against our values. In an interview last week with the Weekly Standard, right-wing rag, Cheney said, quote, and I think on the left wing of the Democratic Party there are some people who believe that we really tortured, end quote. Well, the top Bush administration official in charge, the woman who is in charge of deciding whether or not a prosecution by the U.S. military goes forward, whether or not to bring a Guantanamo Bay detainee to trial. That top Bush administration official has concluded that the U.S. military did in fact torture a Saudi national who allegedly planned to participate in the September 11th, 2001 attacks, the so-called 20th hijacker, interrogating him with techniques that left him, in her words, a life-threatening condition, end quote. Her name is Susan Crawford, and in her first interview since being named the convening authority of military commissions by Defense Secretary Robert Gates in February of 2007, Ms. Crawford said, quote, we tortured Mohammed al-Qahtani. His treatment met the legal definition of torture, and that's why I did not refer the case for prosecution, end quote. Now, for you right-wing, mouth-breathing Republican bastards out there, Ms. Crawford is a retired judge who served as general counsel for the Army during the Reagan administration, and she was a Pentagon Inspector General when Dick Cheney was Secretary of Defense. She is the first senior Bush administration official responsible for reviewing practices at our torture chambers in Guantanamo to publicly state that a detainee was, in fact, tortured. She said in her conclusion that the combination of the interrogation techniques, their duration, and the impact on this particular man's health led to her conclusion. She said, quote, the techniques they used were all authorized, but the manner in which they applied them was overly aggressive and too persistent. You think of torture, you think of some horrendous physical act done to an individual. This was not any one particular act. This was a combination of things that had a medical impact on him that hurt his health. It was abusive and uncalled for and coercive, clearly coercive. It was that medical impact that pushed me over the edge to call it torture, she said. The military prosecutor said a couple of months ago that they would seek to refile charges against Qahtani based on subsequent interrogations that did not employ harsh techniques. Oh, that's great. That's great. What kind of a rat bastard, mind-bred, brain-dead freak says something like that? Oh, a military prosecutor. Okay. Well, we didn't torture him this time. We tortured him over the course of months and months and months, but not this time. All we had to do was step into a cell and hold up some of the torture devices and say, would you like to answer questions? And you know what? Son of a bitch, if he didn't fall down in a puddle of his own feces and urine and confess to everything that we told him to confess to. And we didn't torture him that time. The interrogation was so intense that Qahtani had to be hospitalized twice at Guantanamo with bradycardia. It's a condition in which the heart rate falls below 60 beats a minute and which in extreme cases can lead to heart failure and death. At one point, Qahtani's heart rate dropped to 35 beats a minute, according to the medical records that were kept on this man. Ms. Crawford said, quote, I sympathize with the intelligence gatherers in those days after 9/11, not knowing what was coming next and trying to gain information to keep us safe. Oh, and Crawford, by the way, according to Bob Woodward, is a lifelong Republican. She goes on, but there still has to be a line that we do not cross. And unfortunately, what this has done, I think, has tainted everything going forward. So I realize this is not news to you, Truth Seeker. It is damn sure not news to me. What makes this a news item covered by no less than Bob Woodward in the Washington Post today, what makes it a news item is that this is the first Bush crime family member to publicly identify the techniques we use as torture. Now, when she says, I sympathize with the intelligence gatherers in those days after 9/11, not knowing what was coming next and trying to gain information to keep us safe. When was Katani captured or swept up and tortured? When was Sheikh Khalid Mohammed swept up and tortured? Wasn't it years after Bush and his crime family allowed the United States to be attacked and 3,000 people dead on our soil? Crawford said, after personally reviewing Katani's interrogation records and other military documents, quote, for 160 days, his only contact was with the interrogators. What is that, 6 months? 48 of 54 consecutive days of 18 to 20-hour interrogations. Insults to his mother and sister. He was told that his mother and sister were whores. With a leash tied to his chains, he was led around the room and forced to perform a series of dog tricks. He was beaten. He was shocked. He was waterboarded. He wound up in the hospital twice. Bush and Cheney have got to be put on trial. They have to be put on trial. And as someone said, to the extent that Barack Obama stands in the way of an investigation, a commission, action against these sons of bitches, to that extent, Barack Obama becomes an accessory after the fact, which in most criminal cases is a punishable criminal felony. Barack Obama needs to get on with the business of trying to repair the damage in this country and standing out of the way of justice. Just remove yourself, Mr. President-elect. Get out of the way. You don't have to do anything. But if you prevent justice from being used, then you become complicit. There's no doubt about this. I don't give a goddamn how many dinners he goes to with how many conservatives, how many liberals, how many preachers he appoints to offer up their prayers to some cloud being at the inauguration. That doesn't matter. The only thing that matters right now in the history of this country is whether or not Barack Obama, in fulfilling his oath that he will take on next Monday or Tuesday, whenever the hell it is, that when he takes that oath, he's serious. If he's not, then get the hell away, Mr. Obama. You don't deserve the office.